As the hurricane hunters are busy flying into the storm to gather crucial information, they're also capturing these incredible images. These are lightning strikes inside the hurricane as seen by hurricane hunters.
It's part of the power of these storms. So beautiful to see, but they could cause so much destruction.
Yeah, nice to see from the air, not so much from the land.
Far away.
All right.
Broward County has opened 3 shelters for people to go to if they don't feel safe in their homes. They're Atlantic Technical College, Arthur Ashe Jr. campus on Northwest 23rd Avenue in Fort Lauderdale, Monarch High School on Wild Road in Coconut Creek, and Everglades High School in Miramar. The Everglades High School shelter is a pet-friendly one.
Dorian, right now, about 180 kilometers east of Florida. Our coverage begins with CTV's Tom Walters, who is on the ground for us in Orlando. Tom, let's start with the Bahamas. You were listening in to what the Foreign Affairs Minister was saying. You're seeing some of those pictures as we are. What's the latest?
Well, we know that the Bahamas has suffered a terrible, really catastrophic blow. But, as you noted earlier, we don't fully know how bad it is. We know that the storm came ashore yesterday, tying the record for the strongest Atlantic storm ever to make landfall when it slammed into Elbow Key, then into Marsh Harbor, which is the regional hub for the Abacos. We know that there is enormous flooding. There is tremendous destruction. I mean, we've been speaking to people in the area, and everybody we talk to is really describing, their own homes and property around them as utterly destroyed. It is and because there are areas that have been out of contact since the storm struck, still not been able to be reached. We don't have anything like the full picture yet of just how bad it is in the Bahamas, and it continues to get worse because the storm has been making its way very, very slowly, now going about 2 kilometers an hour in terms of forward motion across Grand Bahama. The wind speeds have been downgraded ever so slightly to just below the Category 5 threshold, a high Category 4. That's a distinction without a difference for the people who are just being hammered by that slow-moving storm that's hitting again and again and again continuously over a period of hours and will continue for hours more before it approaches the Florida coast.
Yeah, and about Florida as well, we were listening to the governor, Ron DeSantis, saying to people, listen, you need to take this very seriously. We know there's lots of preparations going on as well. Florida, no stranger to this kind of thing. You've reported on hurricanes in the state before. What are you seeing and hearing, in Florida?
Well, I think there's a real awareness that, especially after seeing what's happened in the Bahamas, or at least getting a first glimpse of what's happened in the Bahamas, I think there's a real sense here that this storm is a special kind of monster. And the forecast calls for it to get close to Florida and then take a very sharp turn to the north and follow the coastline of the southeastern U.S. back out into the Atlantic. But the question is, how close will it be to the shore? The forecast does not call for a direct hit, but that doesn't mean there won't be hurricane force winds, because there's about a 45-kilometer radius to this system of hurricane strength winds. So some of those lower category strength hurricane force winds may very well come on shore anywhere where the core of this system gets within, say, 45 kilometers of the shoreline. And because of that, there are warnings that have gone out. There's a tropical storm warning has now just been placed on Orlando here, and there are advisories and watches up and down the coast. As a result of that, of course, there are evacuation orders now in additional areas. And yesterday, the governor of South Carolina evacuated over 800,000 people from coastal areas of that state because it's thought this storm is going to go by with just a razor-thin margin of safety.
CTV's Tom Walters in Orlando, Florida, with the very latest, not only in the Bahamas, but also Florida. Thank you for this, Tom. Great to have you back.
And joining me now on the phone is the Director General of the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism and Aviation, Joy Jibrillou. Joy, first, thank you so much for being on the phone with us. We appreciate this.
You're very welcome, Joe, and thank you for having me.
Yes, I want to ask you first, how are the people of the Bahamas doing today? We've seen some pretty disturbing images, a lot of social media indicating a really tough situation. How are you guys doing?
Joe, this is a difficult day for all Bahamians. Yesterday, we thought it was harrowing enough Dorian just sat over the island of Abaco. And, of course, this morning we have a better sense of the damage that took place on Abaco. So the amount of people who lost their homes, in fact, probably 80% of the total population are now without homes. We know that the water table in Abaco has been compromised. So in terms of drinking water, potable water, that's a challenge. And then to wake up to hear the Dorian, we were expecting it to hit Grand Bahama and the island Freeport, the capital of that island, but that it's now sitting there moving at 1 mile per hour. And the images that are coming out, I mean, it just breaks your heart as a Bahamian. And I think the world, they're all feeling the sense of hopelessness and helplessness of what people are experiencing.
Well, we certainly, are really thinking of you guys, and our hearts go out to all of those affected here. You mentioned the drinking water situation has been compromised. Do you have enough supplies to make sure that folks have enough water to drink for the coming weeks?
No, and so this will be one of our appeals going out, because I don't think anyone anticipated just what this hurricane would bring. And while you always think that you're prepared and that you've prepared for the worst, well, then along comes Dorian as a Category 5. And what has happened has just been unprecedented. And so as soon as the all clear is given for the islands, we will be trying to get, supplies in as a matter of urgency and priority.
So you need water, you guys need supplies. What about the infrastructure in terms of the airports and the roads in these affected areas of the Bahamas? Are you anticipating that all of it is underwater?
Not only are we anticipating it from images that we have seen, admittedly, they're from social media, but even from reliable sources who are sending out images when they're able to. The infrastructure is totally underwater. And we know that when the government is able to get out to assess properly, the toll in terms of damage is going to be unprecedented. So someone asked me, what do I think that the people need? And I said, everything, start from when you wake up to when you go to bed, and everything in between. And that's including the infrastructure. So we're going to have to go into a huge rebuild, obviously building up people's just their psyche and getting them out of what they've experienced as well.
What are you doing in terms of contact with other countries in the region? Are you in touch with the U.S. government? Has the White House reached out to offer any sort of assistance yet?
So I have to really just commend everybody. The United States, in fact, the United States has already sent out, I think, a Navy vessel, and so they're sending out support. I know the government of the United States of America has reached out to the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, the whole region of the Caribbean. They're reaching out, and they're all reaching out. What's just heartwarming is that they're saying, we're seeing it, we want to help, what can we do? And because we're all under sort of lock and key. I'm here in the capital, Nassau, and just from the outer bands, we experienced flooding overnight. So we're hampered in movement. And I want to almost say that to the residents of Florida. This storm is so strong that even if you're not in the direct path, the outer bands and the winds and the flooding and the sea surges, prepare for that. And so we're dealing with that as well.
All right, Director General Joy Jibrillou of the Bahamas, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us.
You're very welcome, Joe, and good luck to all our neighbors in Florida, too.
And thank you, and same to you.
CBS 4 News at 5:30.
Here's what's next on CBS 4 News at 6.
Hurricane Dorian grinds through the Bahamas.
Be brave for us. We can't get down. There's a 2-story structure,
leaving a trail of destruction in its wake.
We have kids up here. We can't move. We can't go nowhere.
As the monster storm is expected to move dangerously close to Florida's east coast.
Hurricane Dorian has shown what it's capable of. People need to remain vigilant. If you're ordered to evacuate, you need to do that.
CBS 4 News at 6 starts right now.
This is CBS 4 News at 6.
Right now at 6, South Florida is feeling the effects of Hurricane Dorian. Squall lines moving through our area right now. You're looking at a live picture of Fort Lauderdale, and you can see the clouds in the sky there.
There are several evacuation orders in place across the state of Florida as Hurricane Dorian remains a serious threat to our east coast.
Time-lapse video of the historic and slow-moving storm showing Dorian making landfall in the Bahamas. And here is some of the widespread destruction it has already caused. The storm leaving a hole in the roof of this house and sweeping in several feet of water, flooding homes. At least 5 people have been confirmed killed. CBS 4 Chief Meteorologist Craig Setzer is tracking the storm.
Craig, we'll see more of these bands of bad weather as we go through the night, right?
Yeah, and in fact, the bands will probably get a little bit stronger as we go through the night and stay pretty strong from time to time as we go through the day tomorrow because the storm is getting bigger in terms of its expanse, not more intense in terms of the intensity. When we talk about intensity, we talk about this number right here, winds of 145 miles an hour. But that's very, very close to the center of the storm. But in terms of its expanse, that's the expanse of the tropical storm force winds that extend now 100 miles out to the southwest and 150 miles out to the north, northeast, and southeast. So the storm, it's not really lopsided. It's just the way the winds are distributed around the storm are a little bit larger on the eastern half and a little bit smaller on the western half. But still, possibility of brushing the coast. And because the storm is not going to be moving a lot, it's going to be drifting maybe to the northwest tomorrow. That's very, very slowly. It gets a little bit closer to us, but also the atmosphere is getting more moist over Florida now. And that's helping those storms getting going. So it's 105 miles to the east of West Palm Beach. The new number here, and for those of you who watch it very, very closely, because we've talked about it for days and days and days, we wanted it to be above 26. We wanted it to be closer to 27. That's another tick up. So that's 7 miles in the last few hours that has moved to the north. That's not a lot of motion, but every tick up is a little bit farther away from the islands there, even though it's basically covering the islands. But it's also a little bit less opportunity for it to, and it's not going to, but a little less opportunity for it to move west and south or anything like that. So we just like that number there. This number hasn't changed, so it hasn't gone any farther to the west. Hasn't gone up. That would be it going to the west there. Here is a look at the latest forecast track. This is from the 5 o'clock advisory. So very, very slow motion to the north and to the west there. And then the forecast is for intensity to come down tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, and then into the Wednesday time frame and Thursday, and it's a threat to everybody in the southeast coast, the coastal areas of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and basically north of Palm Beach up the Florida east coast. And then after that, it's out to sea. We talked about this a little while ago. Let's talk about it again because it's important to point out what's steering Dorian and why we know that it's going to go to the north. High pressure off to the east, high pressure to the west. Remember, this is the high that was helping to steer Dorian kind of to the north there. There was an original block in that high, and then this high kind of like built back in and turned Dorian to the west there, and that was very, very troubling. And now there's a new break in the block that's come in, and you think, well, that first break in the block, that coaxed Dorian to the north. Why can't this one coax it to the north? Well, this break in the block is just a little bit out of the reach of Dorian. So what's happened is that now basically in control are these two blocking highs. Now, one thing that we would be concerned about is if this blocking high was forecast to move to the east, because the wind around that blocking high goes like that. And in theory, if that were to happen, Dorian would stay here and then start to move back to the west or to the southwest. But computer models are very confident in how this is going to evolve. Remember, the winds around this high pressure go to the north. So if this guy wins out here, Dorian goes to the north. If this guy were to win here, Dorian would probably go back to the south or southwest. We've seen it with hurricanes. It happens, and that would be the question. But we know with great confidence that this blocking high over here is going to get into position while this blocking high sits here, so Dorian doesn't move too much. There's tomorrow even at 7 p.m. But now watch what happens to this blocking high over here. It starts moving toward Dorian. And remember, the flow from the south like that So there it comes towards Dorian. Now that's Wednesday afternoon, and it is literally coming in. Now, could it push Dorian along to the west as Dorian is being lifted to the north? That's a possibility. That's why there are hurricane warnings up to the north, because there's that possibility it could be pushed to the west. But it's also lifting as we go through time here. There's Wednesday afternoon. Watch what happens. The blocking high kind of sits there, even builds to the south of Dorian, trying to lift Dorian. And by this time, the jet stream winds are carrying Dorian off to the north and east. So we're very confident in this solution as far as we're concerned. The uncertainty lies, is it going to be closer to the coast or away from the coast as it gets to the north? Here's the radar. And you can see that the center is drifting to the south there. And there is the center right now. It's hardly moved at all. In fact, I put a little X there about a half hour ago. And if you look at the 6-hour loop, it has not moved much at all. In fact, we can see kind of the eye wall structure here getting a little bit more ragged as the storm has been sitting now. A little bit of friction from the land there and a thing known as upwelling. And I think we have the expert on that to talk about that, which is Ed Rappaport. Ed, explain a little bit about upwelling. Now, the waters are very warm in the Bahamas. Ed Rappaport from the National Hurricane Center, the deputy director. Let me introduce you properly. But explain a little bit about the upwelling that goes on and what that is and why the hurricane would be going down in intensity.
Yes, Craig, thank you. Upwelling means that what is occurring is that after a long period of the winds blowing across the surface of the water and moving the water, some of the water from below starts to come up. And that water that's below is cooler. And as you bring the cooler water to the surface, that's the water that the hurricane is going to feel. And cooler waters generally mean a lower possible intensity, maximum possible intensity. So stationary storms tend to have a feedback on themselves that leads to their own weakening. And we think that has been part of the reason why the storm has come down a little bit still, though obviously very serious at Category 4 intensity.
Right, very serious there. And now I'm just trying to think about anything, because pretty much everything down here for South Florida is baked in the cake. The one thing that I think we were mentioning was that as the storm starts to lift north, the rain bands that are right now radiating out and passing us, the motion eventually of those rain bands kind of slows down because it's being canceled out by the storm moving away. Maybe just briefly touch on that.
That's right. So as the center moves up, the orientation of the bands will change, but we're going to be on this same side. And you can see that even if we're farther away and farther to the southwest as the storm moves up, we're still going to have rain bands for the next 24 hours or so. The winds that are with them, though, will gradually come down. So while it's pretty gusty in some of these bands and squalls, at least the rains won't have those kinds of winds when we're talking about this tomorrow at this time.
All right, Ed, thanks for joining us. And by the way, everybody here at the station wants to know where you got your shirt and tie, because they want to give me one, but don't tell them, okay? All right, thanks.
Okay,
Ed Rappaport from the National Hurricane Center. Back to you.
Bahamas have been experiencing hours of relentless wind and rain from Hurricane Dorian, and it's had deadly consequences.
Jim Barrett is here with more on the impact to the islands. Jim?
Guys, the news is not good. The death toll from Dorian has now risen to 5, and Bahamas Press, an online newspaper in the islands, report sources telling them that bodies are being collected across Abaco. Already we're seeing glimpses of the storm's devastating footprint. Dorian's howling winds and punishing rains are leaving a trail of destruction in the Bahamas. Floodwaters rose outside the home of the Minister of Agriculture. Meanwhile, another homeowner described the storm's assault on his property.
Our garage door has already come off, and it's floating in this very high water. This is very deep water, which would be about 8 feet right now. On Abacos, some accounts have been even more terrifying.
Please pray for us. Please pray for us, everyone. Please pray for us.
The northernmost part of the Bahamas has borne the brunt of the storm. Floodwaters invaded this house and created a floating living room. Already, the Red Cross estimates that 13,000 homes have been damaged or destroyed.
Baby car seat. We need help. Please, someone please come help us.
7-year-old Lachino McIntosh was the storm's first reported casualty. He drowned Sunday night. Communication to the hardest hit areas has been difficult to impossible, raising the anxiety of loved ones in South Florida and elsewhere. Bahamian authorities are already calling the damage catastrophic, but won't be able to assess it completely until the slow-moving monster storm finally passes. For those in its path, that cannot happen soon enough.
We just pray that we can come out of this once we come out of it with our lives, we're happy.
And once the storm is finally gone, those left to pick up the pieces will be counting on a massive relief effort. I'm Jim Barry, CBS 4 News.
All right, Jim, thank you very much. And Dorian's wrath is being felt up and down the Florida coast. These live pictures from Daytona Beach, courtesy of EarthCam, showing some of the clouds and the rough surf we've seen all day long.
It's a similar situation a bit further south in Juno Beach, where white-capped waves are rolling in. CBS 4's Ty Russell is there live with a look at the conditions there. Ty?
Well, Elliot, it has been raining off and on. Sometimes it was raining really strong out here in Juno Beach. This is northern Palm Beach County, and it's a different scene out here than 5 o'clock. You may remember as I step out of the way, you saw more people along the beach here, but now you can see it is empty. And there was a lot of reflection going on, too, today. I've been talking to some people who were over here looking out, heading east, and they were just looking out because the Bahamas is over there, and they just cannot think about living through a situation just like what the folks in the Bahamas is going through right now. So yes, people have been taking pictures, they have been coming out here, but there's a lot of reflection going on and people are thinking about what's happening over in the Bahamas. As we zoom back in right now, this area is under a mandatory evacuation. Many people are heading back home to continue their preparations to hunker down because again, it's still unclear what may happen over here in this general direction, but many people here are telling me they are prepared. We are live in Juno Beach. I'm Ty Russell, CBS 4 News.
Ty, thank you for that. Parts of Boynton Beach are also under mandatory evacuation orders right now.
Dangerous storm surge is a major concern there. CBS 4's Carrie Codd is live near Boynton Beach with more. Carrie.
That's right. We've been getting some rain bands coming through. Some of the winds have been kicking up certainly throughout the afternoon. One thing I want to show you, when we reported from here last night at 11 o'clock, there was a lot of concern among residents at a mobile home park here about this dumpster that was full of loose construction debris. We called and reached out through text to folks associated with this construction project. And when we got here this afternoon, we saw these straps that had been added to this dumpster tying that material down. So there was some relief from the residents of this mobile home park, many of whom evacuated ahead of the storm. There's cautious optimism tonight that this storm may stay just far enough off the coast that they will not experience that concern about storm surge. But the emergency management director here in Palm Beach County told me a little while ago that they're urging people not to become complacent, that storm surge concern is still real. They're still concerned about big waves, obviously down power lines, power outages, things like that. So people here are cautiously optimistic, but not getting complacent. We do want to send it now down to Deerfield Beach, where my colleague David Sutta is watching things there. David?
Yeah, Carrie, Dorian hasn't really seemed to materialize here in Broward County. We're live next to the pier. As you can see, it is closed, but off in the distance behind me is all of the surfers that have been sort of taking in the day here, trying to find a swell. For the most part, it's been so-so, not so great for them. And as you look down the beach, there have been people kind of coming out today, trying to enjoy what's left of their Labor Day weekend. And again, continuing to pan over to the side here, you see some of the restaurants open here along the shoreline, all the way down to Fort Lauderdale Beach. This is the scene. Not a lot of people really concerned. As you can see, the weather seems to be holding up thus far. I'm David Sutta in Deerfield Beach. Now back to you.
Welcome back to our special coverage of Hurricane Dorian. It's drizzling and windy in Miami Beach right now, but that's not stopping some residents and tourists from swimming and enjoying the high surf for now.
Okay, Chief Meteorologist Craig Setzer.
We showed that live shot earlier, and Jennifer in the weather office said, "Look at all the people." And I looked up, and it took me a minute to register how many people are in the surf there.
Well, you know what? We've had a lot of time to prepare.
Right.
And today is a holiday, so people are out there enjoying it while they can.
And a lot of people here, locally at least, are very relieved right now.
Right. And we have every reason to be relieved here. We're going to get the squalls and the rain bands and stuff like that, but we're feeling better. It's just these rain bands that are moving, they're moving very quickly, so we're just going to kind of have to not get too careless.
Right.
So So I'll show you what's going on, and here's the latest on the hurricane as of 6. This we call an update here. It's not really the new advisory because the advisory was at 5, and this is what they call a tropical cyclone update. And now that the center of the storm is within the range of the United States National Weather Service radars, they can track it very, very precisely, and they give precise locations. So now this value has gone up a little bit more. Every degree in terms of statute miles that we use here on land is about 69 or 70 miles. So a tenth of a degree here is about 7 miles. So this latest position is about 7 miles farther north. This one's unchanged, so it hasn't gone any more to the west. Movement right now, it's basically stationary. They reported in the last hour no movement, and that's kind of an average, though, a longer-term average. And the pressure down, the same, I should say, and the wind speed also the same. Now, the storm, in terms of its size, it has grown a little bit, but because it stopped a little bit farther to our east, it didn't go quite as far west as we were earlier thinking yesterday in the models, yesterday and last night. It looked like it was going to stop a little closer to Freeport. It stopped a little bit farther away. So the edge of the wind field is just a little bit more to the east. And this is what we call our most likely time. I said mostly likely. I'll have to fix that. I'll fix that, I promise. That is the most likely time that the winds reach the coast. And when a storm is moving toward you, this is very valuable because you want to have all your preparations done by the time that edge gets to the coast. These little wind arrows show the wind directions there. So here we are at 6 p.m. We're going to go forward into time. There we're at 11 p.m. So a little bit closer to the coast in Broward, Miami-Dade. The tropical storm force winds, or at least the chances of it, are lower. This line represents like the 50-50 line. There we are now at 5 a.m. tomorrow. So windier yet. And I know Miami-Dade and Broward canceled schools for tomorrow. I think it was such a smart decision. Why risk if this had come farther to the west, as the superintendent said, the buses driving in high winds and squally weather. The good call there. So 5 a.m. tomorrow, and then as we go into 11 a.m. tomorrow, and still we're right on that edge of the tropical storm force winds. So typically on the edge of the tropical storm force winds, they're not sustained. You're not blowing 40 to 50 miles an hour. You have to really get kind of deeper in there to get that sustained wind like we saw in Irma. But we'll have some gusts over 40 to 50 miles an hour in this type of situation, in the squalls especially, and just generally pretty windy. Now that's 11 a.m. on Tuesday. There we go into 5 p.m. Tuesday, 5 p.m. tomorrow, and the storm is starting to pull away just a little bit. That line is starting to leave, starting to depart. Wind is still from the west, blowing pretty good. 11 p.m. Tuesday night, and our winds are turning southwesterly because they're blowing towards the storm, and there we are as the storm finally moves on out of here. There's the radar, and you can see the center right there hasn't moved a whole lot. It's been almost stationary, practically stationary, and there's those big bands that are wrapping around. Unfortunately, this is a difficult situation to even go help the folks in Grand Bahama and the Abacos. There's still some squalls moving through there, and we're getting our own set of squalls here. And with more on that, here is Jennifer in Weather Control.
All right, thank you, Craig. Well, we will continue to see on and off rain. It's going to be heavy at times, and even though they're quick movers, the threat for street flooding is increasing. And so what we see right here is that flood advisory that has been put into effect for parts of southern Broward from Weston down into Miami-Dade and Kendall, and even Palmetto Bay is included in this. We do have some heavy rain rolling away from Aventura, but over Surfside down towards Miami Beach. All of this moving from the northwest towards the southeast. That's the direction of these rain bands. Kendall Lakes all the way to Palmetto Bay. You're getting some heavy rain now, probably hearing some thunder, and we're watching that thunderstorm still over the Everglades, but it is approaching the Redland area and Homestead area. Could have some gusty winds in that. Let's talk about the winds and break it down. Sustained winds for Broward, 20 to 35 miles per hour. This is through tomorrow evening. Miami-Dade, 20 to 30 possible. This is a possibility. Wind gusts, of course, higher than that for Broward could top 60 miles per hour. That is more likely for northeastern parts of Broward County. Again, this is through Tuesday evening. Here's a look at that 7-day forecast. We do expect to see gusty storms once again Wednesday. Improvement in the weather comes on Thursday. CBS 4 News will be back after the break.
Here's tonight's primetime lineup on CBS 4, sponsored by AutoNation. Get one